morning to Jonathan Bourne, the Sales Director from Bourne & Amenity. First of all, thank you very much, Jonathan, for being involved and sponsoring this great debate. We've got a fantastic panel of people coming up very shortly. Before we kick off on the Battersea Power Station debate, I'd like to ask a few questions to you, Jonathan, if that's okay.
Absolutely.
So first of all, I guess the biggest interest is a fantastic project. What an iconic building to be involved in. How and when did Bourne get involved?
So we went up to they had a sort of pre-site meeting up there, which we were invited to in late 2018, which was, I think, hosted by Mace and Barley were involved in that. We went up there to sort of meet the buyers occasion, just to see the project, see Andy Sturgeon's designs, and kind of get excited about the project. So that was 2018. And then, I guess we submitted our tender, and then about March time this year, we were awarded the supply contract for the for phase 2, which was 6 or 7 highly specified of our sort of bespoke soils for lawn areas, rooftop areas, all across the different spectrum of what we do. And then that started, obviously, during the COVID situation. That got started, and we'll be supplying close to 6,000 ton into that project come the end of it. Yeah.
Okay. So on phase 2 then, is that is including the 3 big rooftop gardens that Andy Sturgeon's designed, is it?
That's right. Yeah, that's right. That's where the lightweight soils will go into that, into the rooftop areas. We've got lightweight aggregates going in there, so that'll all be craned up in bulk bags, which has its challenges as well. But then there's also lawn areas with which we supply root zones and sands, and yeah, it's all very exciting. It's all very it's all very modern, and it kind of incorporates all different types of our materials. So yeah, it's great.
So in terms of the logistics then, it's your job to get it to the site, and then the contractors to get the product up onto the roof. Yeah,
I mean, the real challenge is with any of these central London sites is logistics. I think with a project of that sort of size, there's so many different moving parts that we really get a day's notice when they want material. So it has to be booked in on site. We have to give them the driver details and everything like that. So logistically, it's tricky because we have to be able to react very quickly. But I mean, luckily we have our own fleet of vehicles, so we can kind of respond as quickly as the client, in this case Malem, needs us to. But yeah, we don't get much time. It's from sort of 20 ton to 200 ton. We can respond pretty much next day because that's when they need it. They don't give us lead times of 2 or 3 days. It's like, right, tomorrow I want this, I want that, weekends, whatever. But yeah, we have to be able to respond very quickly.
And I guess that shows the advantage of having your own transport rather than relying on somebody else. And also, I guess, it's where you're based, quite easy to get in. Well, it's that easy in London, but
yeah, no, it's not. I mean, we are just sort of just outside the M25, and this is where most of them come from, just south of the M25. And if you pick the wrong time of day, you can be really snagged up in there. So it's about planning everything. Using the same drivers is quite handy. So we've got 30 of our own vehicles. Using the same drivers that are familiar with the sites that have already been signed in is quite handy. But yeah, having our own Force Gold fleet at our disposal gives us a real advantage, because we can keep eyes on our trucks throughout the whole of the delivery process, and we're not relying on anyone else. And it just gives real peace of mind for Malems when they know where the material is, and we can fill them in if there's any problems.
I guess it's lovely when you win that kind of contract, but do you sort of review and try and work out why you've won it, and why they chose it?
Yeah. I mean, we've been really lucky that since the Olympic Games 8-9 years ago, we kind of got into the specified soil business, and we put ourselves in that position where we were matching specifications, working with big clients on big jobs where there were hard specifications to match. And yeah, I think we're just very well placed in terms of our experience with these sort of jobs. Tim O'Hare works on this project, and he's really familiar with our materials, so that makes the sign off relatively easy, because we're really familiar with him. This one was actually sampled and tested during lockdown, so that was a bit of a challenge, but we got it done. It takes all the hassle away from Banham that we've worked with the soil agronomists and the specifiers before. So yeah, we're well positioned because because of location, and B, because of our relationships with, not only with Banham themselves, but also with Tim O'Hare and the people that are working on the specification side of it.
Yeah. I guess another big thing is reliability and delivering when you say you are, and doing exactly what they want when they want it.
Yeah. There's not a massive room for error on these sites. They're very tight, you know, and it's not necessarily the most sort of pressing thing to get the landscaping materials in. So you've got to be in and out, and you've got to get the materials right, and you've got to be in there at the right time. If you miss your delivery slot, there's a good chance to be turned away, which is expensive. So having eyes on our vehicles the whole time, so we can say, listen, we're in there's traffic, or it's going to be an hour late, then they can organize the site for us to work around with us. But it's becoming more and more the norm to work to these tight time frames with tight turnaround times, and sites that, you know, if you're 2 minutes late, they'll turn you around. So yeah, we're used to that kind of thing, and having our own vehicles, as I've said before, just gives us eyes if there are any problems down the line. It just gives us the ability to be flexible with that.
Yeah. And have you encountered any issues?
Yes, as always. Yeah, I mean, just recently we delivered the material there on Saturday, and there was a miscommunication, and it was the wrong material. So that was picked up by ourselves, and then on Monday morning we sent one of our grabs who was in the area to go in there, remove it, deliver the right material. So it's there are always going to be issues. You know, there's human error that's going to be play a part in all these things, but it's how you respond to that, and having the ability to go in and just grab out the raw material and replace it within a moment's notice. That's what the client wants. You know, they don't want a lot of he said that, she said that, blame game going on. They just want it done and removed so they can move on. So yeah, we feel that we can offer that to Banhams.
And I guess just looking more into the future now, then there's, you know, more phases, and a lot of them starting to be planned and starting to happen now. Have you started to tender for any more at this current stage, or
what for Battersea?
For Battersea.
You'd have to ask my Drew, my head salesman, that he could probably tell you a lot more than I can. But we've worked a lot with Banham, and in terms of future projects coming up, you know, it's obviously a very uncertain time at the moment. There's a lot of uncertainty in the marketplace, but we're seeing a lot of projects getting the green light, and we're tendering for a lot for next year. So we're fairly confident that things are going to be pretty positive for us in the future, and that, you know, the emphasis is on green spaces and greening our urban landscapes, and the whole benefits mentally that goes with that. So yeah, we're pretty bullish about the future. In terms of Battersea, hopefully phase 3 or even phase 4 we get a part of, as we're familiar with the site, but it's a hugely competitive marketplace out there. So there are numerous other companies that are there that can offer the same sort of service. So we're really grateful to be working on this project for now, and hopefully it stands us in good stead for any upcoming phases.
Excellent. So it's very good to hear as well, Jonathan, about your positivity about 2021. And so you think, like, you know, once we come out of the lockdown again, or when COVID we're getting used to working with it, you feel that the market is going to continue to move and go in the right direction?
I do.
So it's playing an important role.
I do. Yeah, I do. I mean, I've spoken to various contractors, and they're all, you know, there is a like there should have been before, an emphasis on the importance of green spaces and green projects, and giving everyone a chance to go and breathe and experience the open air. So, you know, we're not seeing many projects put on the shelf or being sort of pushed back too far. I think people are really wanting to press on and get these open spaces, especially when it comes to urban areas and green roofs and that sort of thing. You know, you want to give people the ability to live within the urban environment, but also have a peaceful place that they can go to, just to take 5 from the sort of rigors of city life. So yeah, we're pretty bullish about it. Everyone who I've spoken to has got a sort of you know, a fullish order book going into next year. I mean, we never know. We're in recession now. We might stay in it for a few quarters, but as far as we're concerned, we're gearing up for a pretty big 2021.
Excellent. Well, again, thank you very much for agreeing to sponsor this debate. Sit back and enjoy now. And
Excellent.
we'll
No
catch up
problem.
after.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Jim.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Bye. Good morning and welcome to the second day of FutureScape Virtual. Thank you very much for joining us all in this our new virtual world. This seminar has been pre-recorded, but the panelists will be live to take questions after the debates at the end of the debate. Please feel free to post your questions as we proceed via the link on the screen. So on to this morning's seminar, the Battersea Power Station project, and maybe more importantly, how landscaping and the green space is helping to transform this iconic building and its surrounding areas. We've got an exceptional group of panelists who are going to take us through the vision, the concept, the design, right through to the delivery of the site. First of all, I'd like to welcome all the panelists and thank you very much for taking the time to join us. I will ask them all to do a very, very quick introduction on who they are and their roles within the project. And then we're going into a bit more depth about each of their own elements that they've carried out. So if I can start with Sarah, then if I can say welcome and ask you to do a quick introduction.
Good morning, Jim. My name's Sarah Banham. I am the Communities and Head of Communities and Sustainability for Battersea Power Station Development Company. I've actually been on the project for approximately 14 years now. So I've been around and seen the vision come forth from the very early days as a brownfield industrial site and then grow into what is going to be a new town centre for the borough of Wandsworth.
Fantastic. Benjamin?
Yeah, good morning, Jim. Hi, my name is Ben Walker. I'm the design director for LD Design. I was involved in the original competition-winning pitch for this nearly 10 years ago, so not quite as long as Sarah, but hot on her heels.
Amazing, 10 years. Andy? Morning.
Morning, Jim. I'm Andy Sturgeon. I was brought onto this project by Ben, in fact, and we joined in competition not quite 10 years ago to look specifically at the roof gardens across the 3 main roof spaces.
Okay, Tom?
Yeah, good morning, Jim.
Good morning.
My name's Thomas Mahoney, Managing Director and owner of Banham. I suppose I got involved probably about 4 or 5 years ago, way before phase 1, basically giving cost advice to the client and the PQSs basically on kind of trying to set some budgets for phase 1 and then phase 2 going forward.
Okay.
We'll talk a bit more about how I got involved in the pre-construction after that.
Okay. Liam?
Morning, Jim. Operations Director for Banham, and we've been the contractor for phase 1 and 2 external works at the ground floor upgrade. I first got involved in the project in 2015 as project manager on phase 1, and then have took on sort of in director position of phase 2 and managing the delivery of our team on site.
Fantastic. And Matt, absolutely fantastic that you're out there, actually on site, proving that you're still doing some work on the site. And
I'm Matt Ainscow from Willoughby Landscapes. I've been involved in the project just since last year. I'm currently up on level 10 of the boiler house.
Is it a bit cold up there or not?
No, I'm up to the 9s, but it's actually quite a nice day.
Excellent, fantastic. Hopefully a few more before the winter really sets in.
Let's hope so.
So Sarah, if we just come back to you then, and if you can give us a real sort of vision of what the site, the idea of it, the concept, how it's taken 14 years to get to where we are, and what it is going to be like.
Well, as I said, it's a new town centre for the borough of Wandsworth. So that brings with it the enormous scale of the site. It's a 42-acre site. It's completely mixed use, a mix of residential, commercial, leisure, shops, everything. And also a lot of open space. So approximately 19 acres of open space across that whole site as well. But you've also got to look at it. The planning permission was given back in sort of 2011. That was final permission for the outline master plan. And you've got to put it in the context of the wider opportunity area of 9 Elms. And that again was looking at those links for people sort of from Lambeth Palace in the east, right the way through to Battersea Park, and how you create those sort of green links along that as well. And the power station was a really important part of that. And we're also, of course, blessed with having river frontage as well. So it's an incremental phased approach. So there are 8 phases of development, and we've only built phase 1 so far, but phase 2 and phase 3 are really exciting, and you can just watch them evolving almost daily now and see how that whole shape of this new area of London is taking place.
So the power station was always going to remain?
Yes, the power station is grade 2-star listed. It's an amazing building. It's 6 acres in its own right. That's its footprint. You can take St Paul's Cathedral and just drop it in the middle.
Yeah,
and each turbine hall is the same size as Tate Modern, but there are 2 of them. So again, that just gives you the idea of scale. It is not a small site. It's a big challenge.
And how important was the amount of green space and the quality of the green space in terms of the planning and getting the planning permission?
I think, well, actually, the green space always played a part in the vision for the whole of the estate anyway. Before we even went in for planning, we had a vision of what this place should be like and how it could evolve. And where the green space and the landscape is really, really important is in opening up the site. It is not a gated development. And these open spaces in the public realm are crucial to be able to get people to feed not only east-west, but particularly north-south, and that barrier of the river. So you really need to pull people into the site. So it's such a crucial role, the public realm.
And in terms of securing the investment and making sure the investment was there for that part of it, is that cast in stone? Is it?
I mean, it's the whole history of the power station is really, really complex. So the outline master plan was under a different ownership back in 2011, and then the new shareholders have come on since 2012, and they have completely invested in the site. They've invested in my role. I don't know many developers who invest in a full-time communities team across their entire development, and they are completely committed to bringing forward what will be just an incredible space.
And the time that got lost, will that be added on at the end, or will you hope to pick that up as you go along?
I think, you know, some will be picked up. We are actually, we've got a phased opening of the power station that starts next year, 2021. Yes, it is 2021 next year. So we'll have that, the first bit will open. You can't open a building of that size all in one go anyway. It would be utterly impossible logistically. Well, would not be possible. So that's kind of how we do that incremental phased bit. So Circus West Village, which was phase 1, that opened in 2017. And again, the parkland in front of that, we've just opened another section. And it's just, as you move through the site, you can open more.
Excellent. So if we move on to Ben then to talk about the landscape architecture on it, the other thing quite interesting, Ben, I have in terms of once it's built and it looks fantastic, great. What's put in place about the maintenance and to carry on making it look good and grow and develop and be nurtured?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's a problem, isn't it, for almost every development site. I think one of the things that we've done right from day one here is by having a client who isn't just selling up and moving on, they have a commitment to be there long term. You know, they are, you know, the estate management, they are going to be there longer than probably most of our residents, I guess. And so what we've done right from the very beginning is work with, and I guess in turn, I hope Sarah wouldn't mind me saying, is educate our client to kind of the long-term necessary things we need to put in place. Simple stuff like there's no point popping a tree in the ground if it can't grow for more than 5 years. So that means we've had to educate a whole raft, including engineers, a whole raft of people about how much volume you need, not just for day one, not year 1, but year 10, year 25, year 50. And it's making sure that those kind of the unseen elements, the unseen infrastructure to allow landscape to thrive is in there. And that goes on, and you can keep going on in terms of water management, in terms of soil build-up depths, in terms of how we deal with all the really boring penetrations through slab, make sure they're not going through all these different parts. There's a kind of a huge amount of work which hopefully nobody will ever notice. And when we all go there in 25, 30 years time, still nobody will notice because it will still look good.
Yeah. How does it feel to be like the iconic building that you are going to have an imprint on what's happening there and what is going to be there for the next 30 years?
Terrifying. I think it's I remember I kind of akin it a bit to, I was thinking back to when we won the competition, and with our, I should credit Sam Martin, who came in to help us and won that. We won this competition, and it felt a bit like a relationship. You put all this effort into getting the relationship, girlfriend, boyfriend, whatever, and then the day you start that relationship, you go, oh my goodness, I'm gonna have to put some work into this. And like any kind of good relationship, you have to keep trying, keep working, and I guess for me, through those last 10 years, I mean, just on a personal level, so many things changed. I've had a couple of kids, and I now have this, not just, and I live in Wandsworth, I live very close. I have this kind of terrifying vision that at some stage I'm going to bore the pants off my kids and take them round and say, look at this tree that Daddy made a 25 cubic meter hole for. But actually, the great thing I hope is that it is that old adage about creating a legacy. I think landscape architects often, Andy will far more experience than I in this, but that adage that you can come back to a landscape and it thrives. The building kind of stays the same, but actually what we're creating is something that will only get better, and it looks great to start with. So yeah. I'm pretty happy.
And what are the sort of key elements that you would highlight as really look out for this, or this would be what draws people?
I guess from a client point of view, the coffee shops and the concessions, and I actually think one of the great things, and Sarah touched on it, is that kind of inquisitive nature of people to source things out they haven't found. Now we've put so much stuff in there which is not obvious. So simple things like framing a view. The master plan does that in the kind of grand moves, where the architecture is. We made some real moves to have those quieter spaces. So within the park, there was a 6-acre park on the riverfront. There's not many places in London you get that much land on the river. And the obvious intention was like, right, we're going to pack it full of people, and it's going to be bells and whistles, and we're going to have, I remember talking about I was down there when Elton John played. We're going to have Elton back. Elton's going to come and play. But actually, what we've started to do is build in those moments within all parts of the master plan for that quiet moment. The ability to sit there, with your, I was going to say newspaper, but your iPad, to have a quiet moment. So I look out for those. I think that the range of horticulture is frankly incredible. I think it's, again, testament to a client who's very forward thinking. This isn't like a development which is all green and clipped and pretty boring. There's some really tricky stuff going in here. Difficult plant mixes. There is, the seasonality is going to be incredible. You can see part of it in phase 1, and actually I know Liam and the guys were down there the other day just getting the next phase sorted. It looks brilliant. It is not a normal park, a normal development.
Yeah. And in terms of how you sort of manage traffic and vehicles, and how are they going to play within the area? Yeah,
it's thinking back. I mean, when we started this project, Deliveroo didn't exist. Amazon Prime didn't exist, and it's kind of, I often think like, right, what would we have done differently? Have just non-stop scooter lanes maybe. But actually, what I think the great move of the master plan, this was before the mayor was pushing zero car developments. All the traffic was kept to the peripheries of this development. It was very much a pedestrian and cycle-led development. That means it's still servicing. We still have the John Lewis or the Tesco van or whatever else can come in. But actually, all of the kind of heavy vehicles were moved away. All the servicing for the amazing events venues are all on the ground. It's in the basement. Servicing the park, when we do pop-up events in the park, that's all done quietly, if you like. There's no great big loading bay in the middle of the park, like we have at Hyde Park in the pop-up events. So we planned ahead for those vehicle movements to happen seamlessly.
Excellent. And Andy, thanks, Ben. Andy, talking about your role and your freedom that you had to design how you want to design, how did it fit in with the master plan, etc.?
Well, it was quite interesting, because Ben brought us in, and it was so we've been working with LDA, but of course, because we're up on the roofs and they're down on the ground, it's been, I suppose, hopefully Ben agrees, quite an easy sort of interface in many ways. Interesting use of the word freedom there, Jim, because the rooftops are hugely constrained. We're working with essentially one historic roof, and therefore the loading is very difficult, but all the roofs have to accommodate an enormous amount of venting. It's a huge building, so it requires a huge amount of venting, and we've had to deal with all of that in our landscape, and it's been a moving feast in many ways. Just achieving the soil volumes that we need to achieve up there is hard, just because of the many constraints, and that of course has affected the planting palette. So we're, literally the number of trees that we can have up there. So we've had to be very, very clever with all of that, and it's literally changes week by week as you find one plant is available, another one becomes, isn't available and then becomes available. I'm visiting nurseries this week. It just goes on and on and on. And thinking about the fear and the worry, I've had plenty of worry over this, because you do worry about how it's all going to grow and whether it's going to be too much of a wind tunnel and what battering it's going to get, and are you creating the microclimates that you're trying to create. So it's been a huge challenge, and essentially there are 3 rooftops. There's the boiler house roof right on the top, which is a communal roof garden for the penthouses and apartments up there, but it's been designed to read as one space, and so people have their own private terraces, but when you look out across it, it's meant to look like one garden, and that was really our approach to all the roofs. And then Switch House West is a sort of narrow space. That's the existing roof. It's another communal garden. And then Switch House East is a communal garden, and it's the private office garden for Apple's headquarters. So we're trying to achieve a lot of things, and with all those uses, we're trying to make each space look like one garden. So as things have changed, we've had to adapt and react to many different things over the years, literally over the years. I can't believe how long we've been working on this.
So with those penthouses, how do you balance that in terms of giving them the privacy and make it look and feel like it's an open space?
Well, what we've done is where we've sort of used planting as a hedge, I suppose, but we haven't necessarily done it in a linear a conventional way. But we've often done it so, for example, if you sit down, you feel private and enclosed. But if you stand up or you look out from the many windows that look onto it, then you look across those hedges. So they're not completely private spaces. We've tried to strike a balance between the two things here, because obviously in some instances people do want their privacy. They want to contain a dog in their terrace, whatever, all those practical considerations. So we're having to make sure that we cater for all these different needs, and that's what makes it such a complex puzzle, I think, up there.
And in terms of maintenance, and as you're designing and planting it, how you...
Well, we've had to think about the amount of biomass that's generated, so that we don't have to remove a huge amount each year with annual prunings and that sort of thing. So that's very much influenced the species selection across all the roofs, so that nothing's, for example, if you think about a huge 2 metre tall miscanthus, so that you're not chopping that down at some point in the season, then having to remove all of that foliage. So we've had to think very carefully about that, but at the same time we've had to think about using plants which are going to be long-lived, so that equally, so things like lavenders, which are relatively short-lived, we've had to avoid certain things like that, so that we're creating a robust, resilient landscape that doesn't need a great deal of replacement and maintenance.
Will the 3 roofs look similar in style and design, or
no? They're all quite different. I mean, the original concepts have had to be changed and adapted as we've moved on and dealt with all the constraints and various other elements. But fundamentally, we've ended up with 3 very different roofs, and they're different in their layout as well as being different in their planting style. So they will have a very different character. Switch House West, for example, we are so constrained on some of the planted areas that I think we're down to even, 150 millimeters of soil in some places, and it's deep, so we can get a meaningful tree here, but then only see them right next to it. It's been quite complicated, but that in a way, you know, that's going to influence the look of that particular garden to some extent. And where we've got more soil in other places, that equally has influenced it. So we've got more trees, for example, in other areas, and larger shrubs and more volume in the planting.
And you're happy the way it's progressing and developing?
Yeah. I mean, happy because it's been so sort of constant. It's with some projects you might design it and then it all happens 5 years later and you've had not much going on in between. But with this, you're so close to it the whole time, knowing what's going on. It means that we've been able to sort of fine tune things to our advantage in a way. But it's been tough. It's been relentless in many ways. But and I won't be happy until, well, probably not for a couple of years really, until I see them growing away and thriving.
Excellent. So Thomas, all this fantastic design, and then someone's got to go and build it and take all that soil up and down and create it all.
As Andy's already explained, this is 3 separate rooms, and it almost needs to be looked at as 3 separate projects, because building a roof garden is the same no matter where it is. It's either cranes or hoists to move your materials. What's different here, I think, is the scale and the volume of materials that we need to be moving. On the Turbine Hall B roof garden, the garden to the east, there's over 700 cubic metres of soil alone to that roof, and not a crane in sight. So I think the challenges logistically here are no different from any other roof garden project. They're just on a much bigger scale, where you're trying to build something that's the length of 1.5 football pitches. So it takes up a vast volume of time and manpower just to get the materials where you want them before you even do anything with them.
Tom, can I come to you then and talk about the overall what Maiden are involved in, how they're getting on? And
yeah, so I suppose Maiden sort of got involved, as I said earlier on, about 5-6 years ago on phase 1, delivering the kind of the ground level on phase 1 and phase 2. I suppose the biggest probably starting point is budget. I suppose working on the budget, there was a budget set. We do a tender exercise, and then of course then it's that's the budget, that was the budget, and then trying to work with LDA of trying to decrease the budget, if that makes sense, without destroying the actual landscape, and that's probably the hardest thing, and that's been very predominant on phase 1 and phase 2, and budgets do change with clients, and you expect them to change. And it's phase 2, working with Ben and his team, we probably had a lot of options where we had to reprice, look at what was buildable, what we could actually deliver it for, and not change the aesthetics and keep the actual public space and hard landscape and soft landscape as it was. And that was a challenge with Ben and his team, because and that's probably the biggest challenge at the start, to get on site really. And like Ben said, it's like we did a lot of work at the beginning trying to kind of say we were the contractor of choice, and then all of a sudden you win the project, win the tender, and all of a sudden you've got to start, you've got to get on with it, and it's a challenge, and it's a logistically challenging project, phase 1 and phase 2, because you are the last one in, and you're literally working around the rest of the building, and it's a big plot, and when you're trying to work around the plot, and there's cranes in the way, there's hoists in the way, there's logistics, there's waterproofing, and it's broken up into 40-50 different phases. It becomes quite challenging. It's a challenging project, but a great project to deliver. You know?
And how many people would you have on site then? And what was the sort of the volume of people?
I would say on the peaks of phase 1, I'd say we pushed up to about 150, 130, 40 people. Phase 2, we've definitely had changes because of COVID. The program's been moved around a lot. We're still forecasting around 100 people at peak. And we're not at peak yet. We're still kind of growing. We're still working on the kind of west of the building, open up small phases as we go along. And then we really start getting into the crux of phase 2, really around February time onwards. And we've got a real 6 to 7 months of real intense pressure on site, really, you know, to get it delivered for the opening, really.
And how much for this social distancing and this one-way system, how much is that going to eat into your time and delay what you're going to do?
I suppose the one good thing about being outside, you're outside. I suppose that's one of the big things. I think we've got a lot of teams who work together who are from the same households, if that makes sense. We're trying to work on them kind of rules. Presently, I say we've got a probably best part of 20, 30 guys on site. You've got space. You've got enough space at the present moment. And that will probably decrease as the areas get smaller as we work around the building. But there is a lot on site. You've got one-way systems, you know, to come in on the south side, to go to our side, we're working on the north side next to the Thames. It's a 15-20 minute walk, you know, to get through. So you're losing time if someone wants to go back for a break, you know, all of a sudden you've lost him for 20 minutes just to get there, and he's got to come back. So it is challenging. It's just challenging. Initially at COVID, when we started coming back in, we worked different times. We worked later morning starts, and we worked till 8 o'clock at night time, working kind of longer hours. So you've just got to work with it. I'm afraid you just got to work and challenge your way through it, really, going forward. Yeah.
And how flexible have you had to be in terms of being able to do the design in certain areas? You say lots of it's had to change and alter. More than normal, as normal, or?
It's probably normal on a normal scheme. The client sets a budget, and the budget's that. And I suppose the landscape at the end is always the end. You know, somehow along the way they've spent money on something else, and the budgets get tighter. So it's coming up with a scheme that you start looking at value engineering of don't change the aesthetic. Start looking at shallow paving depths, shallowing substrata, seeing where you can try and change the design without actually physically changing the aesthetics. And that's generally a very common tender approach now. It's very much about that. You know, you've got to do it. Work with the architects. You know,
it feels quite difficult where I think everyone is committed to green space and how important it is and these communal areas, and then it's still, because it's at the end, oh, where can we save the money? And it's like, it must be quite difficult trying to get that balance right, and maybe having some short-term gains in terms of saving the money, but maybe some long-term costs in terms of the maintenance on it.
Yeah, I think you're always conscious of the maintenance at the end. You don't want to create a scheme that then creates more maintenance and more cost down the road. So I think the client was probably very set on what he wanted, and I think and Ben and his team, LDA, on both phase 1 and phase 2, the design was set out very from the beginning. It was just various options. We like along the river wall, we've changed some of the slightly layouts of the actual bleachers. And I still think it's kept the aesthetics. It's kept it very well, you know, but it has made it simpler. We've used, in the bleachers, we use simpler molds to make the actual, so you're not having all bespoke items. It's more kind of, they kind of repeat themselves a bit more, so it keeps the cost down. So it's attacking the items where you don't believe it's going to change the aesthetics too much. And that's what we generally set out from the beginning to do. You know, so we don't upset the architect, don't upset the client, and you end up with a scheme which is very similar to what you started out with. The same thing. Yeah.
Okay. And Liam, then the logistics on the ground.
Yeah, it's a fantastic project. It's a milestone project, and it has all the challenges and the rewards that go with that, really. So yeah, I know from being sort of on every day in phase 1 for 18 months to sort of my role now, sort of once a week and sort of steering the team, that it doesn't get any easier. The external trades are, the rest of the time, we're logistics space. So we want scaffoldings there, we want loading bays, we want hoists, and that is the space that we need to come through and finish. But when you're working around a large building, they need a lot of servicing as well. So being able to pick off areas, get in where between gaps in other people's programs and coordinate deliveries, do more things off-site if possible, so that there's less hours and labour required on-site, and fleshing out that design's a big part of it as well, so that we spend a huge amount of time taking that design to a final stage that we know it's going to work on site. So for an example, on phase 2, our senior engineer drew every paving slab, every joint, so we know where every cut is. That's no mean feat in about 13,000 square meters of paving, but he drew every single slab, so we know what do we need to oversize, where are the clashes coming in, so that when we get to site we can be efficient and get in and out of areas quickly and hand them back to the public. And what's been really nice, it was mentioned earlier that last month we opened up only a small pocket, but the first corner of phase 2, and there were 5-6 years between the procurement of phase 1 and the procurement of phase 2, but people think we've just moved the fence back and it was always there. It ties in so well that it doesn't look, you can't see a line between 2 phases, 2 contractors. And I think that's, testament to the client and the design team that as well, they've stuck with the people and the design and the aesthetics that they want to achieve. And the design with phase 1, it was always with phase 2 in mind. Point to the power station, things are lining up with the watchtowers, even the lighting scheme, it's all drawing you towards those watchtowers and the front doors, if you like. So But yeah, it's a difficult site. There's not many more difficult, but that's why it's such an exciting one really as well. I think if you walk inside that structure or stand at the bottom of the watchtowers, you know, you can't help but be excited by it really.
Lovely, excellent. We're now going to take some questions from the audience. So we're just waiting for the other two to log in as well. Just going to go and check the others are all working and running.
And then, I guess we submitted our tender, and then about March time this year, we were awarded the supply contract for the for phase 2, which was 6 or 7 pilots specified of our bespoke soils, lawn areas, rooftop areas, across the spectrum of what we do. And then that started obviously during the COVID situation. That got started, and we supplied close to 6,000 tonnes into that project.
So on phase 2, was that is included the rooftop garden?
That's right. Yeah, that's right. That's where the lightweight soils that go into that into the rooftop areas. So that'll all be craned up in hot bags, so we went up to there. They had a sort of pre-sale.
Morning, Andy.
Which was, I think, hosted by Mace and Barley. Were involved in that. We went by occasion just to see the project, and kind of get.
You're right, Andy?
Yeah, good, thanks.
Good. So the video is going to run for about 40 minutes.
Okay.
And then we come to Q&A. So if you want to disappear or want to carry on working, then, you know, we don't need to do anything. People can't hear you or see you at the moment.
Okay, good. I always like it like that.
Or you can have a nice conversation between you all.
Yeah.
Lawn areas, rooftop areas, all different spectrum. And then that started obviously during the COVID situation. That was, we'll be supplying close to 6,000 tonnes into that project today, because that's what it needed. They don't give us lead time.
So on phase 2, that is including the 3 big rooftop gardens that Andy Sturgeon designed. I guess also, I guess,
the rooftop area. No, it's not. I mean, with which we supply root zones and sand. It's all very exciting. It's all very. This is quite handy. So we've got the 30 of our own vehicles. Drivers that are familiar with the sites that have already designed in.
So in terms of the logistics, then it's your job to get into the site and then contractors to get the product up onto the roof.
Yeah, I mean, the real challenge is the London sites is logistics. I think that with a project of that sort of size, there's so many different moving parts that we really.
It's lovely when you went to contract, but you sort of review and work out why
we have to give them the. Logistically, it's tricky. We had to react very quickly. We've been really lucky that luckily we are in fleet of vehicles, so we can kind of go into the specified soil business and we don't get time to put ourselves in that position where we were match specifications, respond pretty much next day, because that's when lead times of 2 or 3 days. It's like right tomorrow. I think we did very well.
I guess that shows their own transport rather than relying on somebody else. And also, I guess, you know, it's where you're based, quite easy to get. Well, not it's that easy in London, but
yeah. And this one was actually sampled in we are just sort of outside the M25, and this is where most of them come from, outside the M25. And if you pick the wrong time of day, you can be really snagged up. And so it's about planning everything, using the same drivers is quite handy. So we've got 30 of our own vehicles. Using the same drivers that are familiar with the sites that have already been signed in is quite handy.
So we've got about 196 people tuned in so far.
Eyes on our trucks throughout the whole of the delivery process. And we're not.
There's not a massive room for error on these sites. They're very tight, and it's not necessarily the most.
It's funny when you win that kind of contract, but do you sort of review and try and work out why you won it? Why they chose it?
Yeah, I mean.
Having eyes on our vehicles all the time, so we can say, listen, we're in traffic, or it's going to be now late, and then kind of tries to sign for us and work around with it.
Business, and we put ourselves in a position where we were matching specifications, working with big clients on big jobs where there were specifications to match. And we're really well placed in terms of our experience with these sort of jobs. Tim O'Hare works on this project, and he's really familiar with our materials. So,
have you had some uses?
Relatively easy.
Yes, as always. Yeah, they were just recently. We did a material there on Saturday, and
challenge, but we got it done. It takes all the hassle away from Malem. We've worked with the
cells, and then the specified grounds in the area.
Yeah,
It's all gone. I'll press the wrong thing again.
And it's not necessarily the most sort of.
And I guess just looking more at
so you've got to be in and out, and you've got to be having our
I have to ask my Drew, my head salesman, that he can probably tell you a lot more than I can, but we've worked a lot with Banham, and in terms of future projects coming out, it's obviously a very uncertain time at the moment.
how do we get onto the video? How do we get people to watch the video? They'll be still in the video, unless it's how do people click?
Yeah, so we're fairly confident it's going to be pretty positive for us in the future, and the emphasis is on green spaces and greening our urban landscapes and benefits mentally that goes with that. So yeah, we're pretty bullish. Hopefully phase 3 or even phase 4 we get a part of as we're familiar with the site, but it's a hugely competitive market that's out there. So there are numerous other companies that are so we're really grateful to be working on this project now, and hopefully it stands in good stead for the upcoming phases.
Sam, it's very good to hear the positivity about 2021. Do you think that once we come out of the lockdown again, or when COVID is, we're getting used to working with it, you feel that the market is going to continue to move and go in the right direction?
I do.
So it's playing an important role?
I do, yeah, I do. I mean, I spoke to various contractors, and they're all, there is a like there should have been before, an emphasis on the importance of green spaces and green projects, and giving everyone a chance to breathe and experience the open air. So, we're not seeing many projects on the shelf being sort of pushed back too far. I think people are really wanting to press on and get these open spaces, especially when it comes to the urban areas and green roofs and that sort of thing. You want to give people the ability to live within the urban environment, but also have a peaceful place that they can go to just to take flight from the sort of rigors of city life. So yeah, we're pretty bullish about it. Everyone who I've spoken to is sort of bullish on what about going into next year. You never know, we're in recession now.
Again, thank you very much for this today. So enjoy it now. has been pre-recorded. The panelists will be live to take questions after the debates, at the end of the debate. Please feel free to post your questions as we proceed via the link on the screen. So on to this morning's seminar, Battersea Power Station project, and maybe more importantly, how landscaping the green space is helping to transform this iconic building and its surrounding areas. We've got an exceptional group of panelists who are going to take us through the vision, the concept, the design, right through to delivering the site. First of all, I'd like to welcome all the panelists, and thank you very much for taking the time to join us. I will ask them all to do a very, very quick introduction on who they are and their roles within the project, and then we're going into a bit more depth about each of their own elements that they've carried out. So I can start with Sarah, then if I could say welcome and ask you to do a quick introduction.
Good morning, Jim. My name's Sarah Banham. I am the Communities and Sustainability Head of Communities and Sustainability for Battersea Power Station Development Company. I've actually been on the project for approximately 14 years now. So I've been around and seen the vision come forth from the very early days at the brownfield industrial site and then grow into what is going to be a new town centre for the borough of Wandsworth.
Yeah, good morning, Jim. Hi, my name's Ben Walker. I'm the design director for Building Design. I was involved in the original competition which was nearly 10 years ago. It's not quite as long as that.
Amazing, 10 years. And then,
Morning, Jim. I'm Andy Sturgeon. I was brought onto this project by Ben, in fact, and we joined in the competition not quite 10 years ago to look specifically at the roof guards across the three main roof spaces.
Tom?
Good morning, Jim. Yeah, I'm Mahoney, managing director and owner of Banham. Before I got involved, probably about 4 or 5 years ago, went for phase 1, basically giving cost advice to clients and the TQS basically on kind of what essential budget for phase 1 that they're basically and talking about how I can reconstruction of that.
Liam?
Morning, Jim. Operations Director for Banham. We've been the contractor for phase 1 and 2 external works, ground floor, great. I first got involved in the project in 2015 as project manager on phase 1 and then took off director position of phase 2.
That's it. And Matt, absolutely fantastic. You're out there actually on site, moving the facilities to work on site.
I'm Matt Ainscow, moving Ainscow, please. I've been involved in the project since the last year. I'm currently up on level 10 of the White House.
Is it big colour?
No, I'm back up to 9. What did I say?
Okay, a few more to reach. So Sarah, if we just come back to you and give us a real vision of what the site, the idea of it, the concept, how it's taken 14 years to get to where we are, and what it is going to be like.
Well, as I said, it's a new town centre for Wandsworth, so that brings with it the enormous scale of the site. It's a 42-acre site. It's completely mixed use, a mix of residential, commercial, leisure, shop, everything. And also a lot of open space. There's approximately 19 acres of open space across that whole site as well. But you've also got to look at it. The planning permission was given back in sort of 2011. That was final permission for the outline master plan. And you've got to put it in the context of the wider opportunity area of 9 Elms. And that again was looking at those links for people sort of from Banham Panellists in the east, right the way through to Battersea Park, and how you create those green links along that as well. And the power station is a really important part of that. And we're also, of course, blessed with having river frontage as well. So it's an incremental phased approach. So that only built phase 1 so far. Phase 2 and phase 3 are really exciting, and you just watch them evolve almost daily now, and see how that whole shape of this new area of London is taking place.
So the power station was always going to remain?
Yes, the power station is great 2-star listed. It's an amazing building. It's 6 acres in its own right. That's its footprint. You can take some Paul's Cathedral and just drop it in the middle. And each turbine hall is the same size as take one, but there are 2 of them. So again, that just gives you the idea of scale. It is not a small site. It's a big challenge.
And how important was the amount of green space and the quality of the green space in terms of planning, getting the planning?
I think, well, actually, the green space always played a part in the vision for the whole of the estate anyway. Before we even went into planning, we had a vision of what this place should be like and how it could evolve. And where the green space and the landscape is really, really important is in opening up the site. It is not a dated development. And these open spaces in the public as well are crucial to be able to get people to think not only east-west, but particularly north-south. And that barrier of the river, you really need to pull people into the site. So it's such a crucial role for the public realm.
And in terms of securing the investment and making sure the investment is there for that part of it, is that cast in stone?
I mean, the whole history of the power station is really, really complex. So the outline master plan was under a different ownership back in 2011, and then the new shareholders have come on since 2012, and they have completely invested in the site. They've invested in my role. I don't know many developers who've invested a full-time community team from their entire development. And they are completely bringing forward what will be this incredible space.
And the time that got lost will that be end on the end, or will you hope to pick that up?
I think, some will be picked up. We've got a phased opening of the power station that starts next year, 2021. Yes, it is 2021 next year. So we'll have that, the first big load. You can't open a building of that size all in one go anyway. It would be utterly impossible, logistically, would not be possible. So that's kind of how to do that incremental phase thing. So Circus West Village, which was phase 1, that opened in 2017. And again, the parkland in front of that, we just opened another section. And it's just, as you move through the site, you can open more.
So if we move on to Panellists, talk about landscape architects on it, the other thing quite interesting then I have in terms of once it's built, it looks fantastic, great. What put in place to carry on?
any kind of good relationship, you have to keep trying, keep working. And I guess for me, those last 10 years, customers, and now that this started, actually, the thing I hope is that, it is that old adage about that's going on. That adage can go back to the landscape. But all the plans that actually will embrace myself and hopefully get better. And it looks great stuff. So, yeah.
What are the sort of key elements that you highlight or really took out for this and just what yours be?
I guess when I'm trying to do the coffee shops session, I think one of the great things that Sarah touched on is that kind of positive nature of things, source things out there, we put so much stuff in there which is not obvious. So something like framing a view, the master plan does that around. We made some real moves to close prices spaces. So all that part was at 6 8 not many places in London get that much land. And the obvious intentions are bells and whistles. When the other talk about it comes down to bells and drop. Melton's going to come back. But actually, what we start to do is in those moments within the past the ability to sit there and nuance and write that, to help write. So I look out for that. I think the main structure is frankly great. I think it's getting tested to the time. This isn't like the development tool. There's some really tricky stuff there. At different parts. There is the seasonality is really important. This is part of the phase one is actually leaving the guys who don't have this play, just putting the next phase two. It is great. It is not a normal.
And in terms of how do you sort of manage traffic and vehicles? How are they going to manage it?
It's thinking about we already started this project, delivery differences, actually, all the traffic very much of the pedestrian and slow that comes up. It's still safe, it's still up there. Actually, would be
and talking about your role, the freedom that you had to design, how you want to design, how to fit in the master plan, etc.
But it was quite interesting, Ben brought us in, but it was an easy, so we've been working in LVA, but of course, because we're up on the roofs and they're down on the ground, it's been, I suppose, hopefully Ben agrees, quite an easy sort of interface in many ways. When interesting use of the word freedom there, because the site rooftops are hugely frustrating. We're working with essentially one historic roof, and therefore no one is very different. The roof is it's a huge building, so we've had to deal with all of that in our landscape, and it's been a moving feast in many ways. Just achieving the soil volumes that we need to achieve up there is hard, just because of the many constraints, and that of course affects the planting planning. So we're, literally the number of trees that we can have up there. So we've had to be very, very clever with all of that, and it's literally changed by weeks. It just goes on and on and on. And thinking about the fear and worry, I've had plenty of worry over this. So you do worry about how it's all going to grow, whether it's going to be too much of a wind tunnel, back there are three rooftops. There's the boiler house roof, roof garden for the penthouses up there, but it's been designed to read as one space, so people have their own private terraces. But when you look out across it, it's meant to be one garden, and that was really our approach for all the roofs. And then Switch House West is a sort of narrow space. That's the existing roof. It's another communal garden, and then Switch House East is a communal garden, and it's the private office garden. So we're trying to achieve a lot of things. With all those uses, we're trying to make each space look like one garden. So as things have changed, we have to react. Over the years, literally over the years, we can't believe how long we've been working on this.
So with those penthouses, how do you balance that in terms of giving them the privacy and making them feel like it's an open space?
Well, what we've done is where we've sort of used planting as a hedge, I suppose. We haven't necessarily done it in a linear way, conventional way, but we've often done it. So, for example, if you sit down, you feel private and closed, but if you stand up, you look out from the windows and you look across. So it's not completely private spaces. We try to strike a balance between the two things.
In terms of maintenance and as you're designing and planting it,
well, we've had to think about the amount of biomass that's generated, so that we don't have to really a huge amount each year. We don't have to that sort of thing. So that's very much influenced the species structure of two groups. So, for example, a huge chimney sort of scan for steam and chopping that down to we've had to think very carefully about that, but at the same time, we've had to these products which can be long lived, so that people, so lavender we've had to avoid certain things like that, so that you're creating a robust, resilient landscape that doesn't integrate with the
will tree roots look similar in style?
They're all quite different. I mean, the original concepts have had to be